Hey, when someone says make a good first impression, what they're actually speaking of is the most common relational style of the old world, the trauma bond. The trauma bond. A trauma bond is when people are unable to connect to each other from a place of love. Without truth, there is no love. Without love, there is no connection. Just trauma bonding. When the narcissists gossip, they are bonding, causing trauma to others while they bond. And first impressions are quite manipulative if we think about it. If I meet someone and my first impression of them isn't who they turn out to be, then that person is fake. Like, what? But there's like two sides to this, right? Because our first impressions of people can be different when we have a subjective consciousness. What that means is we perceive people not as what they actually are, but what serves our ego. What makes us feel superior. That's subjective consciousness. Using everything in life to serve the ego. So you're not perceiving objective truth or reality. Another reason why first impressions exist is narcissists cast illusions on the first impression. Whatever they want you to think they are, they will pretend to be. And that's their first impression. So when someone says to make a good first impression, they're basically saying, cast an illusion so you can bond your victim to you. Cast an illusion so you can bind people to you. And it sounds really dark, and it is dark. But it's more like in the narcissistic systems, everyone is bound to each other. They all bond over trauma, with trauma, traumatized versions of themselves. No one is connected to each other. Conversations are surface level. There is no depth, there is no intimacy, and there is no connection. Just trauma bonding. So you may know love bombing, narcissists, in the beginning of a romantic relationship. They pretend to be this amazing person. They give you lots of gifts. They give you lots of compliments, lots of affection. They literally appear to be different than what they actually are. And this appearance is an illusion. And what they're hoping for is that you will fall for that illusion and you will take that illusion as them. That's who they are. And then when they switch, it creates a sort of whiplash in the consciousness that creates a trauma bond. This isn't what it conflicts. What you saw conflicts with what they are, and that conflict isn't able to be resolved. So it creates a bond, an illusion that binds you to them. And so the dark truth about this is that people are all trauma bonded to each other all the time. In narcissistic systems, we have to understand how relationships work. I talked about this a little bit in my video about the roots of trust issues. But in narcissistic consciousness, relationships go something like this. People cast illusions, you fall for those illusions, and you kind of exist in this painful, disconnected, separated way of being where people feel less than others, people feel more than others, and it's all toxic. There's no objective observation of who is right for me and who is wrong for me, who I want to be around. It's just people cast illusions and then we are sucked into relationships with them. In a trusting and healthy state of consciousness, when you meet someone, you observe them. Over time, you observe them. And that is how you build trust with what you see. You notice patterns. This is how they behave, this is how they behave, this is how they behave, this is how they behave. And those patterns let you keep yourself safe, protect yourself, emotionally safe, physically safe. Because we live in a world where there is danger. In narcissistic consciousness, this idea that there's danger in the world has this like illusion over it, this fog. Like, no one's dangerous, everyone's safe. And we just believe everything everyone says. But it's not real, it's not true. And that's how we get sucked into narcissistic relationships. But I'm thinking about this from a workplace. Like, I remember I had a manager who, when I first met him in the interview, my first impression of this person was that he was very insecure, and he was not listening to what I was saying. The energy was very chaotic. Okay? That was my first impression of this person. And as I got to know this person, he became to be very, overconfident, narcissistic, manipulative. And I just noticed how, when I'm thinking back of it, the first impression I had of him in the interview was this like chaotic, insecure, anxious, selfish, self-focused type of person. And as we went on into working together, there was this whole different personality that emerged. But the goal of that first impression to someone who hasn't removed their illusions from their consciousness, for someone who doesn't trust themselves, would be to create this illusion of who he is. How this works is that someone with that same energy, chaotic, selfish, insecure, you, at some point in time, you had to create an illusion in your mind that this person was not what they actually were. Like with a parent, for example, if you had a chaotic, insecure, controlling parent, to survive that parent, you create an illusion of who that parent is. So what they do is they put out their true selves as their first impression. And that first impression is supposed to trigger your trauma with your parent or with a past person. And when it does that, the same illusion is created. Ooh, this person is amazing. This person is better than me. I'm inadequate. Does that make sense? So that's the goal of the first impression, to trigger the trauma that recreates the same illusions that you've created about people in your past. And if you're not observing their further behavior, this bond works. It works. And then people are not actually connected to each other in these like ways of living, because you can't connect to dishonesty, dishonest energy, lies. You can't connect to it. There's nothing to connect to. I observe this with sometimes when people share things with me from a dishonest place, I can't help them because there's no honest thread for me to connect to give them advice. Does that make sense? So it's like, if they're not being honest, there's no way to receive any form of anything in. You can't receive when there's no honesty. You can't receive. That's the dark truth about first impressions. They are a dynamic of trauma bonds. Trauma bonded relationships. You want to make a good first impression, cast a bunch of illusions so that your victims, your people, your friends, your coworkers will never see the truth about you. That's how narcissists operate, right? They operate in this fear that they must abuse and harm people to keep them around, which is kind of counterintuitive, right? What do you mean? Why would abusing and harm people keep them around? Well, it would keep them around if they have illusions in their consciousness, and if they have unresolved trauma, and if a person has bad intentions towards others. What will keep them around are those illusions, the bonding. Otherwise, if you knew someone had horrific intentions towards you and was an awful person, you would dip out. You'd be like, bye. You'd protect yourself. You'd have boundaries. You would watch what you share with them. So, yeah.